Hello and welcome back to Storytime with Eric Zimmer. Where we last left off in the wonderful story of Henry Sugar, Henry decided to become like a modern-day Robin Hood. And what I mean by modern-day Robin Hood is, he would take money which he won at casinos from those greedy, wealthy people and give it to children of the world and set up orphanages for those who have been less fortunate. And he managed to convince his accountant to handle all the money and send it to orphanages and set them up for him as he traveled around the world. And in his first year, he made over £8 million. Imagine that. Now comes the last bit of the wonderful story of Henry Sugar, which is just as wonderful as the rest of it. So you ready? Alright, let's begin. Chapter 13. For 7 years all went well. Nearly £50 million had arrived in Lucerne and had been safely banked away. Already, John Winston had got 3 orphanages established. One in France, one in England, and one in the United States. 5 more were on the way. What a generous man. Uh-oh. Then came a bit of trouble. There is a grapevine among casino owners, and although Henry was always extraordinarily careful not to make too much from any one place on any one night, the news was bound to spread in the end. Oh, God. They got wise to him one night in Las Vegas when Henry, rather imprudently, took $100,000 from each of 3 separate casinos that all happened to be owned by the same mob. Oh, God. What happened was this. The morning after, when Henry was in his hotel room packing to leave for the airport, there was a knock on his door. A bellhop came in and whispered to Henry that 2 men were waiting for him in the lobby. Other men, the bellhop said, were guarding the rear exit. These were very hard men, the bellhop said, and he did not give much for Henry's chances of survival if he were to go downstairs at this moment. "Why do you come and tell me?" Henry asked him. "Why are you on my side?" I'm not on anyone's side," the bellhop said. "But we all know you won a lot of money last night, and I figured you might give me a nice present for tipping you off." "Thanks," Henry said, "but how do I get away?" "I'll give you $1,000 if you can get me out of here." "That's easy," the bellhop said. "Take your own clothes off and put on my uniform. Then walk out through the lobby with your suitcase. But tie me up before you leave. I gotta be lying here on the floor tied up hand and foot so they won't think I helped you. I'll say you had a gun and I couldn't do nothing." "Where's the cord to tie you up with?" Henry asked. "Right here in my pocket," the bellhop said, grinning. It just goes to show you there actually are a lot of good people in this world. Especially those who know they're helping people like Henry Sugar. Oh boy. Henry put on the bellhop's gold and green uniform, which wasn't too bad a fit. Then he tied the man up good and proper with the cord and stuffed a handkerchief in his mouth. Finally, he pushed 10 $100 bills under the carpet for the bellhop to collect later. Down in the lobby, 2 short, thick, black-haired thugs were watching the people as they came out of the elevators, but they hardly glanced at the man in the green and gold bellhop's uniform who came out carrying a suitcase and who walked smartly across the lobby and out through the revolving doors that led to the street. At the airport, Henry changed his flight and took the next plane to Los Angeles. Things were not going to be quite so easy from now on, he told himself. But that bellhop had given him an idea. I wonder what it was. In Los Angeles, and in nearby Hollywood and Beverly Hills, where all the film people live, Henry sought out the very best makeup man in the business. This was Max Engelman. Henry called on him. He liked him immediately. "How much do you earn?" Henry asked him. "Oh, about $40,000 a year," Max told him. "That must be more than... I don't know how much that is in today's money, but still must be a lot than most people make." I'll give you 100,000, Henry said, "if you will come with me and be my makeup artist." "What's the big idea?" Max asked him. "I'll tell you," Henry said, and he did. Max was only the second person Henry had told. John Winston was the first, and when Henry showed Max how he could read the cards, Max was flabbergasted. "Great heavens, man," he cried. "You could make a fortune!" "I already have," Henry told him. "I've made 10 fortunes, but I want to make 10 more." He told Max about the orphanages. With John Winston's help, he had already set up 7 of them in 7 different countries. Max was a small, dark-skinned man who'd escaped from Vienna when the Nazis went in. He had never married. He had no ties. He became wildly enthusiastic. "It's crazy," he cried. "It's the craziest thing I've heard in my life. I'll join you, man. Let's go!" From then on, Max Engelman traveled everywhere with Henry and carried with him in a trunk such an assortment of wigs, false beards, sideburns, mustaches, and makeup materials as you have never seen. He could turn his master into any one of 30 or 40 unrecognizable people, and the casino managers, who were all searching for Henry now, never once saw him again as Mr. Henry Sugar. As a matter of fact, only a year after the Las Vegas episode, Henry and Max actually went back to that dangerous city, and on a warm, starry night, Henry took a cool $80,000 from the first of the big casinos he had visited before. He went disguised as an elderly Brazilian diplomat, and they never knew what hit them. Now that Henry no longer appeared as himself in the casinos, there were, of course, a number of other details that had to be taken care of, such as false identity cards and passports. In Monte Carlo, for example, a visitor must always show his passport before being allowed to enter the casino. Henry visited Monte Carlo 11 more times with Max's assistance, every time with a different passport and in a different disguise. Max adored the work. He loved creating new characters for Henry. "I have an entirely fresh one for you today," he would announce. "Just wait till you see it. Today you will be an Arab sheik from Kuwait." "Do we have an Arab passport?" Henry would ask. "And Arab papers?" "We have everything," Max would answer. "John Winston has sent me a lovely passport in the name of His Royal Highness Sheikh Abu bin Bey." And so it went on. Over the years, Max and Henry became as close as brothers. They were crusading brothers, 2 men who moved swiftly through the skies, milking the casinos of the world and sending the money straight back to John Winston in Switzerland, where the company known as Orphanages SA grew richer and richer. And finally, Chapter 14. Henry died last year at the age of 63, his work completed. He had been at it for just 20 years. His personal reference book listed 371 major casinos in 21 different countries or islands. He had visited them all many times, and he had never lost. According to John Winston's accounts, he had made altogether £144 million. I wonder how much that is in American money. He left 21 well-established, well-run orphanages scattered about the world, one in each country he visited. All these were administered and financed from Lausanne by John and his staff. But how do I, who am neither Max Engelman or John Winston, happen to know all this? This must be from Roald Dahl's point of view. And how did I come to write the story in the first place? I will tell you. Soon after Henry's death, John Winston telephoned me from Switzerland. He introduced himself simply as the head of a company calling itself Orphanages S.A. and asked me if I would come out to Lucerne to see him with a view to writing a brief history of the organization. I don't know how he got hold of my name. He probably had a list of writers and stuck a pin into it. He would pay me well, he said. And he added, a remarkable man has died recently. His name was Henry Sugar. I think people ought to know a bit about what he has done. In my ignorance, I asked whether the story was really interesting enough to merit being put on paper. All right, said the man who now controlled £144 million. Forget it. I'll ask someone else. There are plenty of writers around. That needled me. No, I said, wait. Could you at least tell me who this Henry Sugar was and what he did? I've never even heard of him. In 5 minutes on the phone, John Winston told me something about Henry Sugar's secret career. It was secret no longer. Henry was dead and would never gamble again. I listened, enthralled. I'll be on the next plane, I said. Thank you, John Winston said. I would appreciate that. In Lucerne, I met John Winston, now over 70, and also Max Engelman, who was about the same age. They were both still shattered by Henry's death, Max even more so than John Winston, for Max had been beside him constantly for over 13 years. I loved him, Max said, a shadow falling over his face. He was a great man. He never thought about himself. He never kept a penny of the money he won, except what we needed to travel and to eat. Listen, once we were in Biarritz, and he had just been to the bank and given them 500,000 francs to send home to John. It was lunchtime. We went to a place and had a simple lunch, an omelette and a bottle of wine, and when the bill came, Henry hadn't got anything to pay it with. I hadn't either. He was a lovely man. John Winston told me everything he knew. He showed me the original dark blue notebook written by Dr. John F. Cartwright in Bombay in December of 1934 about Imrat Khan, and I copied it out word for word. Henry always carried it with him, John Winston said. In the end, he knew the whole thing by heart. He showed me the account books of Orphanages S.A. with Henry's winnings recorded in them day by day over 20 years, and a truly staggering sight they were. When he had finished, I said to him, "There's a big gap in the story, Mr. Winston. You told me almost nothing about Henry's travels and about his adventures in the casinos of the world. That's Max's story." John Winston said, "Max knows all about that because he was with him. But he says he wants to have a shot at writing himself. He's already started." "Then why not let Max write the whole thing?" I asked. "He doesn't want to," John Winston said. "He only wants to write about Henry and Max. It should be a fantastic story if he ever gets it finished, but he is old now like me, and I doubt he will manage it." "One last question," I said. "You keep calling him Henry Sugar, and yet you tell me that wasn't his name. Don't you want me to say who he really was when I do the story?" "No," John Winston said. "Max and I promised never to reveal it." "Oh, it will probably leak out sooner or later. After all, he was from a fairly well-known English family. But I'd appreciate if you don't try to find out. Just call him plain Mr. Henry Sugar. And that is what I have done." The end. And there will be more Roald Dahl classics read by me coming soon. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you next time on Storytime with Eric Zimmer.